Hello, and welcome to, I would say, the second episode of the True Fans of Don Bluth podcast, the first official podcast for our YouTube channel that we have just got going now. It's been, it's been a long process. I just realised that the first episode of the podcast posted through Podomatic was actually nearly a year ago, middle of August last year. So, with all the craziness in the world, obviously everything got postponed. I've got two other YouTube channels I've been working on as well at the same time. The links will be in the description. So it's just been hard trying to toss up all those things with obviously the COVID crisis, with my work. But this is something that I've really wanted to get into. So I thought, well, I've already kickstarted the podcast series last year, so I'm going to keep going with that. And there'll be more and more videos coming through on the YouTube channel, so it won't just be the visual podcast on YouTube. So just on that, the True Fans of Don Bluth podcast will be available still on Podomatic, so you will be able to listen through it just on MP4 or whatever file you listen to if you don't want a visual version. But then on YouTube there will be a visual version accompanied with clips to do with the topic I'll be talking about from a Don Bluth movie. So the first episode I did, if you don't remember or didn't listen to or didn't get time or didn't realise there was a first episode, it is on Podomatic under True Fans of Don Bluth. That was an introductory episode where I tried to cover as many things as I could. The series now will be, I will focus on a separate Don Bluth film every episode, more in depth, more facts, more behind the scenes type things on those. And like I said, on the YouTube channel there will be other YouTube videos. I'll be trying to highlight a few things from the page and the group. There's also a group. If you want to join that, the link's on the Facebook page. Massive thank you to everyone that has followed the page since I think 2012, 2013. It's been such a long journey. Sitting on 60, 70 likes / follows for maybe a year or two from that point, and then the page has just slowly been growing more and more, and the group has, I won't say blown up, but the group has been very active maybe the last month, with more and more people joining, so it's great. Please feel free. My name is Gareth Goose Hunter. I am the admin of the page from the very start, and I'm also the admin of the group, so please, you'll find me in there. Any questions, anything, any ideas you want me to do for YouTube in the future, please let me know. I would be more than happy to meet those requests. So we'll get into the video. So the first film I'll focus on is the Secret of NIMH. So arguably Don's and Gary's greatest ever movie. It was their first ever feature-length film released when they went independent from Disney. Their second after Banjo the Woodpile Cat, which was their first short film they released after leaving Disney. Secret of NIMH. What a fantastic movie. I always love talking about this film. So we'll start with some interesting facts. So, as most of you know, Don and Gary did leave Disney in 1979 in the middle of the production of The Fox and the Hound. So another big key figure in that group of leaving was also John Pomeroy, with a handful of the animation staff, which I think was around about 10, so I think 13 including those main three. They all just wanted to leave because they didn't think that Disney had the spark that it once had post Walt passing away. And most of the legendary Nine Old Men had either retired, died, or their work on the films had really decreased. And they thought since then it became such a power struggle between the heads at Disney. At that point, obviously, animation wasn't really their key focus at that point. So the animation department was kind of getting a bit neglected. And Don at that time was one of the head honchos in the animation department, but still couldn't get his point, but like he couldn't get things he wanted to get done, and he was trying to carry on what Walt had started and obviously created decades and decades earlier. And Walt had actually pitted Don as a possible successor when he was alive. So a lot of pressure on Don here, like a lot of pressure, and he would have felt as though he would have wanted so bad to go back to the key days of the Walt Disney period and try and meet the high standard that he set. And Gary Goldman, another key figure that was friends with Don that whole time through Disney, and they worked together side by side. They became each other's right hand man, and they just, their animation and their storytelling really just flowed, and you could see why their friendship becomes so strong so early, because they made amazing stuff together, as we see at Disney and post Disney as well. So they left with a handful of animation, and what I can tell too is the animation stuff they took with them were actually highly regarded animators at the studio. So that there's still a bit of a distaste between the animators that stayed at Disney and between Don, John, and Gary for stealing those animators and kind of kicking them when they were down, because Disney was in a really rough patch in that 70s period leading into the 80s, and they would be in that struggle for 15 years up until obviously the start of the Disney Renaissance, which was I think 88, 89 with The Little Mermaid. So there's still a little I would say bad taste in the Disney mouth. If you ever seen, there's a Disney documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty in '09 about the starting of the Renaissance, and they vaguely and shortly cover the Don period, maybe for a couple of minutes, and they actually say the quote, "Don, a man who kicked us when we were down." So there obviously still is a bit of a distaste in their mouth. So we'll go focus on the Secret of NIMH. So this was their first feature-length film, as I stated earlier. In comparison to The Fox and the Hound, which was obviously halfway through production when Don and Gary left, and was in development hell for a couple of years, I think not mainly due to them leaving, but had a big part in that. The Fox and the Hound cost $12 million, and then The Black Cauldron, which was released shortly after, cost $44 million. $56 million in total for those two movies that both did not make that money back at all, even close to. The Secret of NIMH actually only cost $7 million, and it was actually produced in half the time of the other two movies were. So obviously The Fox and the Hound went through big changes and big production halts in that, but The Black Cauldron also went through that, but not as massive. So it took The Secret of NIMH 30 months to finish developing, and it's just incredible that they had almost half the budget of Fox and the Hound and half the time to make that. Like, what a film. Like, it just goes to show how great of storytellers and leaders Don and Gary were to take 10 to 13 animators with them, spend 30 months on The Secret of NIMH, and it'd be just an amazing film. Like, it really did capture the magic that Disney had lost for a very, very long time. Arguably, since a lot of people date it back to Sleeping Beauty, which is 1959, which is incredible. A lot of people argue that there were a few gems in the 60s, mainly The Jungle Book, but even then people didn't think The Jungle Book had that spark, because it wasn't really a fantasy as such. But I really liked The Jungle Book. I thought is an incredible movie, and the pop culture references that it still has to this day are quite large. But so The Secret of NIMH really had that magic. It had the music, the animation. It really had that like dark animation that Disney didn't have. So not only did Don and Gary create the magic that Disney lost, they created something of their own, which was their dark animation that also had some magic behind it as well, which makes this movie such a standout in the 80s and probably ever for animated films. So Don and Gary, massive props to them on this. Like, I watched this movie when I was a kid, and I watch it now in my mid-20s with my nieces or by myself, and it has the same magic that it did when I was a kid, and it's just incredible. And the voice work, everything about it is just amazing. Another interesting fact about this movie is, so this was based on a book that a lot of people might know or not know, that it was based on a novel from 1971 called Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH. Now, the movie was shortened originally to just Frisby, and it went through a few different changes in the name, but the toy company Frisby, which was spelled Frisbee, which, whereas now everyone refers to a Frisbee as a Frisbee, back then it actually wasn't, but Frisbee obviously became such a big company name in that field and everyone just refers to them as Frisbees. Now, they had to change the name of the movie to Mrs. Brisby to avoid trademark problems. But yeah, they didn't think Brisby was really a catchy name, something that comes out of the mouth as nicely as Frisbee. So that's why they changed it to The Secret of NIMH, which was actually a line taken from the book. And actually, I think it's actually a more unique name, and it does sound a lot better. It's obviously a lot longer, but I don't think that turns people away from watching it or whatever. Now, according to Gary Goldman too, there was an animator, I think it was Ken Anderson, took the book to Wolfgang Reitman, who was the chief animator at Disney at that point in time, I think in the 70s, mid-70s, I think not long after the book was released. And Reitman's reply simply was, "We've already got a mouse." And that was, right there is a quote that really sums up why Don and Gary left, because we've already got a mouse. A terrible attitude to have when such a compelling story and great story isn't even looked at or read by the chief animator, and he says, "No, we've already got a mouse." And that's just funny to me, obviously, because they went on to make plenty more movies involving mice, including 1980s The Great Mouse Detective. So, that's a great story, and obviously that's based on Sherlock Holmes, but you compare that story to The Secret of NIMH, The Secret of NIMH story is always going to win out. So, big loss there for Wolfgang, but hey, we don't know if Disney could have made it as good as, better, or worse than Don, but we're just glad that Don and Gary got their hands on it and Disney turned it down. Now, a lot of people realise that NIMH is a weird word, and they don't realise that NIMH is actually I can't even think of the word here, guys. The word NIMH is actually a abbreviation of the National Institute of Mental Health, which is the research facility where the rats were being experimented on. Now, the characters in the movie actually only call it NIMH, except for the very first time that it comes up. Now, this is dialogue between the farmer and his wife that is earlier in the film, which goes, "Farmer's wife: Dear, a man come by today from NIMH." NIMH? "Yes, the National Institute of Mental Health. He was asking if we had noticed anything strange about the rats on the farm." Now, that is a big line, because that is so big to the story, because obviously that's why the rats and all that are what they are, because of the NIMH facility. Now, it's obviously something that Don went on to do throughout his career, and something that Disney's done on and off for quite some time, is tackling adult themes. Now, this is a really, really big theme. Obviously, mental health is such a big thing these days, because it's such a big thing that affects people's lives every day, and it's something that everyone's trying to work so hard to try and fix, because it's just a horrible thing. And back in the 80s and obviously the 70s when the book was written, mental health obviously wasn't as focused on as it is now, and this is a big thing to be tackling back then. Bit like, different than the AIDS epidemic and all that back then. So massive, massive props to the book, the author of the book, and Don and Gary for tackling something like this, but then also not focusing on it too much, because it is a kids movie nonetheless, a kids/family movie, but they do want adult themes in there, so adults watching it are also just as engaged as the kids. And then as you're a kid, you grow up, realise, wow, I appreciate this movie even more now, because I understand what actually was happening behind the scenes. Now, a lot of people don't know, a lot of Don fans know this, but a lot of other people don't know the Xanadu film clip Don't Walk Away. A lot of people don't realise that was animated by Don, Gary and their crew, and it's a very, very good film clip. If you want to check it out, it is Xanadu Don't Walk Away on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure it was their first project after leaving Disney, so they actually did this first and then I think Banjo, but because of the music and because they obviously released songs like they released movies, I think it was actually released after Banjo, but this was the first one that they had worked on. Now, there was actually a lot of significant changes from the book to the movie, obviously. A massive thing, like such a big thing, is kind of crazy to think that it wasn't in the book because it just flows so well with the movie. And things like this, I do not mind getting changed from the source material in the movie because it does flow well with the movie, and I'm always up for that if it makes the movie better. Now, Mrs. Brisby's magical amulet actually isn't in the book at all. It was not added, and I think three of the producers had the idea, and it got written in. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy. But hey, it added to the movie, and like I said, I don't mind those things getting added in. This is one of my favourite facts from the movie. As Don Bluth fans, a lot of people will obviously know and absolutely adore Dom DeLuise, who went on to voice in a lot of the movies, and his most prominent character obviously is Dream of the Crow. He actually was a very minor character in the movie and the original script in early stages, and the story behind it was they had seen, I think, Dom do a voiceover or was part of an ad, and Don and Gary were actually in separate households, saw the ad and both clicked, wow, he needs to be in our movie. And they tried to ring each other at the same time. After multiple times, they got through to each other and said, we need this guy to voice in our movie. And once he came in, did some rehearsals, kind of table reads, they fell in love with him and how he brought that character to life, and he actually got way more lines, actually got put in to the movie as arguably a top 3 main character. So I love that story so much because Dom was such a likeable guy, and for him to be able to turn a character from a minor character into a major character is just absolutely amazing. So John Carradine obviously voices in this movie. Now this is taken from the website mentalfloss.com. It says John Carradine did his lines in one take on painkillers. He was quite ill at the time. This is what the paragraph reads. Producer Gary Goldman told an online forum that the great John Carradine, hired to lend gravitas to the voice of the wise owl, arrived late to the afternoon recording session and seemed to be intoxicated. Carradine's agent confided that the 75-year-old actor suffered from near debilitating arthritis, the medication for which made him loopy. Also, agent said he'd probably had a martini at lunch. Goldman, Bluth and their cohorts used coffee and conversation to get Carradine sharp again. Once he was sober, he recorded his lines, declared each delivery to be the best performance he had in him, said he wouldn't do retakes or alternate versions, and left. Quotation from Goldman is, good thing he gave a great performance. That is incredible. I actually didn't know this, hence why I read this last minute from the website. That's absolutely incredible to me that, I didn't realise he was going through crippling arthritis at the time, and I did not know that he was, almost unable to read lines and be coherent. But massive props to Goldman, Bluth and their team for being obviously accommodating to him, and proves they really, really wanted Carradine part of this movie, and his performance is absolutely amazing. That's why I'm blown away by this fact, because I did not know that. And even better that it was all one take, because he just didn't have it in him to do more. It just goes to show actors' professionalism, and if they can push through something and do it in one take, it is just absolutely amazing, and that just blows my mind. So we'll go into some little facts before we finish off here. So like I stated earlier, the budget for the film was $7 million and officially made back $14.7 million at box office. So it does get confusing over time if the budget is 100% everything that the movie costs to make, including marketing, blah blah blah. Sometimes it's not. A good example of that is recently Disney, their sequel to Maleficent, actually ended up costing around about 500 to 600 million in total, including marketing, which marketing alone was 200 million. I don't think the marketing was any high price for this movie at all, but it would be interesting to be able to get that information to see if the budget for this film was only 7 million and they made back 14, which means they made back their budget obviously and then double that as well, which is great. The voice cast for this movie, a lot of older people or movie fanatics in general will know the voice cast. So Elizabeth Hartman as Mrs. Brisby, amazing performance, absolutely amazing performance. Derek Jacobi as Nicodemus. I would put this up there with Carradine's and DeLuise's performances as among the best in this film. He only has a few lines, but such a powerful voice. Hermione Bedelia, I think I pronounced that right, as Auntie Shrew, as Mrs. Brisby's neighbour, quite a comedic part. Obviously, Carradine is a great hour. DeLuise as Jeremy the Crow. Arthur Mallet as Miss Rage is another great performance. Now, these two characters are my favourite characters of the movie. Obviously, due to part of the amazing voice work. So you have Peter Strauss as Justin, as obviously he's the captain of the guard, and he obviously is the main male protagonist of the movie. And then you have Paul Shenar as Jenna, obviously the Rat of NIMH, who's the main antagonist of the movie, and probably my favourite villain of the whole Don Bluth canon. He's just an incredible character, written so well, adapted from the book so well, voice acting, his character design, he's like, just the way they designed him and the way that they did his face mechanisms and animations. He's such a sneaky, angry, self-centered villain, and it just comes across perfectly. Now, nice little fact for a lot of people that actually may not know this. Will Wheaton, obviously known from Star Trek and maybe from Big Bang Theory for the younger crew, he plays Martin. He's Mrs. Brisby's firstborn son and the second child. Obviously not a big part, but, you know, a big-ish part. I think it was actually Will's one of his first couple of roles. So it's quite funny when someone does a little voice acting role as a kid and then they grow up to be someone that's very, very high regarded in the Star Trek fan base. We'll finish that one today, and like I said, please message me, message the page, post in the group what you'd like to hear from me or like to see from me. If you'd like to be a part of the team in any way, if you'd like to do animations for me, if you'd like to do intros for me, you'd like to do music for me, please hit me up. I don't have a lot of money, but I love supporting people that are trying to get their things kick-started like I am myself. And like I stated earlier, I do have other channels which I will put in the description. So if you want to, please like and subscribe to them, and please subscribe to this channel so I can continue to do videos like this, do podcasts like this, and in the future I would love to set up a Patreon where I could do bigger and better things. One of the things I've always wanted to do is it's a very high and unlikability goal, but I would love to interview Don Bluth or Gary or both. Well, hey, I'm happy to build slide to that. If anyone in the group or the page is someone that used to work for Don or Gary or worked on one of the movies, let me know. If that be something small as someone's personal assistant, or as an animator's assistant, or as an animator, or did music for any of the movies, please hit me up. I would absolutely adore you if you would let me interview you through Skype and post it on the podcast and YouTube pages. I would be absolutely indebted to you guys. Or if you know anyone that did do any of those jobs and you think they would be able to do that for me, that would be great. So thank you guys so much. Like I said, I owe you guys so much. I'm so happy you guys are staying around for so long. So thank you very much. Thank you. Peace out. Cheers.